Here in the studio, our diplomatic correspondent Mike Wagenheim and number 23 on the United Right list, Jeremy Saltan. Welcome both. Mike, I want to read you a quote from Prime Minister Netanyahu's column in Israel Hayom today. He said, "My commitment is clear to establish a strong right-wing government after the election, which will continue to lead the state of Israel to unprecedented heights and guarantee the security of Israeli citizens. This is my commitment to Likud voters. There will be no unity government." Why is he making this very public pledge now?
Because he wants the votes coming into Likud. He wants to make sure that Likud will be the biggest party far and away, that it will get the mandate from President Reuven Rivlin. And even if he doesn't have the numbers, at least he has the leverage at that point. That is key. If he cannot form a right-wing coalition and the numbers, unless they change dramatically over the next 5.5 weeks, he won't be able to. At least he'll get that mandate. He'll be in the position of power. He can dictate the terms, possibly to blue and white, as to how a unity government might be run. That's his only hope at this point. A right-wing coalition based on the numbers we have now, and nothing's changed over the last few weeks, just ain't happening.
But how we try to unpack this, because we have Netanyahu saying he's going to lead a right-wing government. At the moment, he doesn't have the numbers. He knows that. So does he have some trick up his sleeve that we don't know about? Or after he gets the mandate to form the government, I mean, what happens? Does he fold?
Listen, there are a few things that he can do to increase the numbers. For instance, yesterday, he met with the leader of the Zehut party, Moshe Feiglin, and tried to get him to drop out of the race because he's afraid Feiglin most likely won't cross the mandatory threshold needed. Those votes will be wasted. Less votes for the right-wing bloc. He's going down the line trying to narrow the number of votes that will be lost. All in total, it's not going to make enough of a difference. Listen, the Prime Minister said before the last election that he had no intention and had no priority on placing an immunity law on the table once the next Knesset was formed. He went ahead and had his people do exactly that. It didn't wind up passing in the end because there wasn't enough time to get it done before the Knesset dissolves. You make promises during the election campaign, you break them afterward.
Jeremy, in this column in Israel Hayom, the Prime Minister said any vote for a party that isn't the Likud is effectively a vote for Gantz and Lapid. It's a vote for a left-wing government. You must be concerned, presumably, that the Likud is now going on a strategy of gobbling up the support that goes to smaller parties like yours.
I'm not concerned at all. Look, anyone who wants a right-wing government needs to vote for the United Right. It's very clear. If you vote for the Likud, you risk that possibly you might wake up and find a very different government. Look, you just heard what you're...
Sorry, I don't follow. Why?
It's very simple. Let's look at what happened in the last election. We had a situation where the Prime Minister tried, and I believe him in his op-ed when he says he would prefer a right-wing government. But when he was not able to form one, his first call was to Avi Gabay. He wanted to offer Sheli Yachimovich the Justice Ministry. He wanted to take Stav Shapir, who is right now in the merits list, and make her minister in his government. If you want a right-wing government, you can only vote for the United Right.
No, but Jeremy, it doesn't matter whether someone is passing their vote between the United Right and the Likud. The fact remains that if you, as a right-wing bloc, do not have a majority, you have no government.
If the United Right is small and the Likud is too large, the Likud will not be able to form a government. Or they will have to go ahead and form a government with people who are not on the right.
But if the United Right is large and the Likud is small, because you pass 3 seats between the two of you, you're still not going to be able to form a government.
Let's look historically. If you look in the 80s, what happens when the Likud is up there...
Let's look at the numbers.
You need
if you
to
don't
look at
have
historically.
61, but Jeremy, if you don't have 61, it doesn't matter whether the United Right is 12 and Likud 30, or you hand over a couple of other seats.
I'll tell you something about the polls. Whatever you see now is going to be very different from what we have on Election Day. And what we have seen over the last 10 years and 4 elections is that the right wing has enough of a base and enough support to be able to have a majority of seats in this government. However, if Likud has too many seats and the United Right does not have enough seats, that runs the risk of us being in a situation where we could lose a right-wing government and find ourselves in national unity.
Jeremy, you haven't explained the logic there, because if you pass over 3 seats between the Likud and the United Right, or the United Right and the Likud, your right-wing bloc is the same size. Netanyahu now is trying a very deliberate strategy of trying to draw all your soft flank voters away, and you're going to find yourself in a much smaller presence in the next Knesset.
I trust the voters to go ahead and look at the Likud record and look at the record of the United Right that is led by Ayelet Shaked, who is the most popular minister of the outgoing government. And I tell you that I believe the voter will go ahead and choose us over that of the Likud. Look,
you don't think the Likud has leverage to try to turn to people and say, listen, it matters who the largest party is?
Let's look at Likud. You have people like Tzachi Hanegbi, Yuval Steinitz, Yisrael Katz, 3 ministers that voted for the disengagement. You have people on the Likud list that support a two-state solution. I think it's very clear. You want to have a right-wing government, you need to vote for the United Right.
Jeremy, what do you do if we wake up the morning after the elections, we have very similar results, the right-wing bloc minus Lieberman does not have a 61-seat majority, Netanyahu doesn't have a government. What does the new right, or the United Right, do now?
So again, what we said we're going to do is very simple. Once we get to the president's residence, we are going to recommend the party that has the most seats in the right-wing bloc, which of course is most likely going to be the Likud and Prime Minister Netanyahu. If we get to that 42-day barrier, and Netanyahu has not been able,
he's hit a brick wall.
He's not been able to form a government.
Same as last time.
And then Netanyahu says, I want you guys to vote for another election. Let's have a third election in 2019. That is something we're not going to support.
So no third election. What happens then?
So we go ahead and we go through the path of what the law says. The law says that a second person gets a chance. If that doesn't work, there's a third chance. When it comes to the third chance, that means any candidate who can get 61 nominations is able to go ahead and present their candidacy to the president to try to form a mandate. If we see after 3 people have tried to form a government and none of them have been able to do so, then unfortunately we would end up in another caretaker government by law and have to go through another election.
Oh, dear God. Mike Wagenheim, what do you make of that?
God help us all. Listen, in the end, here's what's going to happen.
And may he give us strength.
Yes, indeed. There's going to be one of likely 2 outcomes here. Number one, either Benjamin Netanyahu or Benny Gantz are going to fall. There's going to be a unity government in some form or fashion, whether it's broader than those 2 parties, whether they involve 4 or 5 parties and they want to bring others in. That's up for debate. That's up for negotiation. In the end, the numbers tell the story, and they're not budging. They're not even close right now. The numbers tell the story that there will be a unity government. It's a matter of who budgets. The second point is, I want to make this point. Last time Benjamin Netanyahu hurt himself by burying Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, and their party didn't cross the threshold and it limited his options. This time he buried himself by joining up with the Kulanu party. It gained him nothing in the polls. It actually winds up costing the right-wing bloc 4 or 5 very valuable seats. Indeed. That's the margin they're going to fall short by.
What if of the election, if 1,400 people had ended up voting for your party rather than the Likud, we wouldn't be going into elections. Again, Jeremy Saltan, Mike Wagenheim, thank you very much.